Right now, it feels obvious that there is only one version of you, one mind, one life, one continuous journey, moving from birth toward an uncertain future. Every memory you possess reinforces this feeling. Every experience seems to belong exclusively to you. You wake up each morning carrying the same identity you had yesterday. You remember your childhood, your successes, your mistakes, your fears, and your hopes. The continuity feels undeniable. It feels permanent. But what if that feeling is misleading? What if the universe is so vast that somewhere beyond the limits of observation, beyond every galaxy we will ever see, beyond distances so immense that language begins to fail, there exists another person who is identical to you in every possible way? Not someone similar, not someone who resembles you, not someone who shares your personality. An exact copy. Every atom arranged in precisely the same pattern. Every memory identical. Every thought identical. Every dream identical. At this very moment, that person could be reading these exact words, experiencing the same emotions, wondering the same questions, believing themselves to be the only version that exists. And strangely enough, modern physics cannot completely dismiss this possibility. In fact, some interpretations of cosmology suggest that if the universe is large enough, or infinite, then duplicates may not merely be possible, they may be unavoidable. This idea sounds like science fiction. It sounds like fantasy. It sounds like the kind of concept invented for novels and movies. Yet, it emerges naturally from surprisingly simple mathematics. The story begins with a question that humanity has asked for thousands of years. How large is reality? For most of human history, people assumed the universe was relatively small. Ancient civilizations imagined Earth at the center of creation. The stars seemed fixed on a distant sphere. The cosmos appeared finite, ordered, and understandable. Then science began expanding the horizon. The Earth was not the center. The Sun was not the center. Our solar system was not the center. Our galaxy was not the center. Every time humanity discovered a larger scale, reality grew more astonishing. The Milky Way alone contains hundreds of billions of stars. Then astronomers discovered hundreds of billions of galaxies. Then they realized that even this unimaginable collection represented only the observable universe, the region from which light has had enough time to reach us since the beginning of cosmic history. That distinction is crucial. Observable does not mean entire, it only means visible. Imagine standing in the middle of a vast ocean during heavy fog. You can see a certain distance in every direction. Beyond that distance, visibility ends. But the ocean does not end. Your vision ends. The observable universe works similarly. We can only see as far as light has traveled since the Big Bang. Beyond that horizon, reality may continue. And according to many cosmological models, it likely does. Perhaps for trillions of light years. Perhaps forever. The moment infinity enters the conversation, something remarkable happens. Most people hear the word infinity and imagine an extremely large number. But infinity is not merely large. Infinity changes the rules. In an infinite universe, bizarre events stop being improbable curiosities and begin becoming statistical necessities. Consider a simple example. Imagine writing every possible arrangement of letters. Eventually, you would create every sentence ever written, every novel, every poem, every scientific paper, every conversation that has ever occurred, not because you intended to create them, not because they were special, but because infinite combinations eventually produce everything that can be produced. Now apply that logic to matter itself. Every human being is ultimately an arrangement of particles. A tremendously complex arrangement, certainly, yet still an arrangement. Your brain contains an enormous but finite number of atoms. Your body contains a finite number of atoms. The number is staggeringly large, but it is not infinite. That means there are only a finite number of ways those atoms can be arranged to create a person identical to you. The number may be incomprehensibly huge, yet finite. And here is where the idea becomes unsettling. If space itself is infinite, then finite arrangements eventually repeat, again and again and again, somewhere beyond distances so large they cannot meaningfully be imagined. The exact arrangement that forms you could occur once more, not because of destiny, not because of reincarnation, not because of anything mystical, simply because infinite opportunities eventually exhaust every possible configuration. The universe begins behaving less like a story and more like mathematics. This possibility leads to one of the strangest questions ever inspired by modern cosmology. If another identical version of you exists somewhere else, what exactly makes you unique? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. Your location, your history, your position in space. Yet from the perspective of physics, those differences may not matter as much as we intuitively believe. Imagine two perfectly identical books. Every page contains the same words. Every sentence is identical. Every detail matches. One book sits in Paris, the other sits in Tokyo. Are they different books? In one sense, yes. In another sense, they contain exactly the same information. Now imagine two identical brains. Every neuron, every memory, every thought, every emotional response. If their internal information is identical, where exactly does individuality reside? This question touches something deeply uncomfortable about consciousness. Most of us assume we possess a unique center of awareness, a singular perspective that can never be duplicated. Yet physics offers no clear explanation for why consciousness should behave this way. The laws governing matter appear indifferent to individuality. Atoms do not care whether they belong to you or someone else. Electrons possess no labels. Particles carry no memory of ownership. Nature simply arranges matter according to physical laws. The feeling of uniqueness emerges from the arrangement itself. But if arrangements can repeat, then perhaps uniqueness becomes more fragile than we imagine. Before rejecting this idea entirely, it is important to remember that modern cosmology has repeatedly forced humanity to accept truths that once felt impossible. The Earth moves, time slows, space expands, mass bends geometry. Quantum particles exist in states that defy common sense. Again and again, reality has proven stranger than intuition. Perhaps the existence of another you belongs in that category. Perhaps not. But the possibility alone reveals something profound. The universe may be far larger than our everyday experience suggests, so large that concepts like individuality, identity, and uniqueness begin to look different when viewed against the backdrop of cosmic scales. Tonight, we begin a journey into that possibility, not to prove that infinite versions of you exist, not to claim certainty where none exists, but to explore what happens when cosmology pushes one simple question to its logical extreme. If reality is truly vast enough, could you exist again? And if the answer is yes, what does that mean about who you really are? Imagine waking up tomorrow morning. Nothing feels unusual. The sunlight enters through the window exactly as it always does. The room looks familiar. The memories in your mind feel continuous and intact. You remember who you are. You remember where you have been. Life appears to proceed normally. Then someone presents you with an impossible piece of information. Somewhere in the universe, there is another person who is completely identical to you. Not similar, not related, not inspired by your existence. Identical. Every memory, every scar, every preference, every fear, every belief. Even this exact moment of awareness. At first, the claim sounds absurd. Yet before asking whether it is true, a more fundamental question emerges. How large would reality actually need to be for such a thing to happen? Most people instinctively imagine the answer must be infinity. Surely only an infinite universe could contain enough space for another version of you. Surprisingly, that is not necessarily true. The numbers involved are enormous, but the idea begins much earlier than infinity. To understand why, it helps to think about something far simpler than a human being. Imagine a small puzzle made of only 10 pieces. There are many ways to arrange those pieces, but eventually every possible arrangement can be listed. Once every arrangement has appeared, repetition becomes unavoidable. No matter how much longer you continue, you are no longer creating entirely new possibilities. You are revisiting possibilities that already existed. Now imagine increasing the complexity. 100 pieces, 1,000 pieces, 1,000,000 pieces. The number of possible arrangements explodes so rapidly that it becomes difficult to comprehend. Yet something important remains true. No matter how large the number becomes, it is still a number, still finite, still limited. The same principle applies to physical reality. Human beings feel infinitely complex because our experiences are rich and unpredictable. But physics describes us differently. From the perspective of nature, every human being is an arrangement of matter and energy, a fantastically intricate arrangement, an arrangement capable of thought, imagination, love, fear, creativity, and consciousness, but still an arrangement. That fact leads to a remarkable realization. There may be an enormous number of possible human beings, yet there is not an infinite number. Your brain can exist in many different states, but not infinitely many. Your body can take many different forms, but not infinitely many. Even the information that defines your memories and personality is ultimately finite. This does not make you less extraordinary. If anything, it makes your existence more astonishing. Everything you have ever loved, every conversation, every dream, every emotion, every moment of self-awareness, all emerging from a finite collection of particles arranged in a very particular way. The universe somehow takes simple ingredients and produces conscious experience. That alone is already miraculous enough, but it also creates an unexpected possibility. If there are only a finite number of possible versions of you, then an unimaginably large universe may eventually contain another. Not because reality is trying to repeat itself, not because there is a hidden cosmic plan, simply because large enough systems naturally revisit possibilities. We see this principle everywhere. Imagine entering a gigantic library. At first, every book seems unique. You walk through aisle after aisle, discovering stories you have never encountered before. Thousands become millions. Millions become billions. Eventually, however, something changes. The library becomes so large that certain stories begin appearing again. Perhaps not immediately. Perhaps not for distances beyond imagination. But repetition slowly becomes unavoidable. The same sequence of words appears. The same paragraph appears. The same page appears. Eventually, an entire book appears again. Not because anyone copied it, because the number of possible books is finite while the library continues expanding. Many cosmologists think reality may work in a similar way. The observable universe already contains more matter than the human mind can meaningfully visualize. Yet the observable universe is not necessarily all that exists. It is simply the region whose light has reached us. Beyond that horizon, space may continue, and continue, and continue. The most fascinating part is that we do not experience this scale emotionally. We can understand it intellectually. We can say the words. We can write the numbers. But our intuition remains trapped within ordinary human dimensions. A city feels large. A country feels enormous. A planet feels almost incomprehensible. Yet a planet is tiny compared to a star. A star is tiny compared to a galaxy. A galaxy is tiny compared to the observable universe. And the observable universe itself may be only a small patch within a much greater reality. This creates a strange tension between everyday experience and cosmic possibility. When you look in a mirror, you feel unique. The feeling is immediate, direct, certain. You have never met another version of yourself. You have never encountered evidence that one exists. Everything in your daily experience supports the idea that you are singular. Cosmology does not challenge that experience. Instead, it challenges the assumption that our experience reveals the full scale of reality. For most of history, humanity believed the stars represented the entire cosmos. They looked complete. They looked final. Only later did we discover that what seemed enormous was merely a small part of something vastly larger. Again and again, reality has expanded beyond the boundaries of human expectation. The Earth was larger than our ancestors imagined. The solar system was larger. The galaxy was larger. The universe was larger. Each discovery forced humanity to confront the same uncomfortable truth. The world is not obligated to match our intuition. Perhaps the same lesson applies here. Perhaps the reason another version of you feels impossible is not because it is impossible. Perhaps it is because our minds evolved to navigate villages, forests, and lifetimes measured in decades, not realities measured in trillions upon trillions of light years. The deeper question is not whether duplicates exist. The deeper question is whether uniqueness survives contact with cosmic scales. Because once reality becomes sufficiently vast, familiar concepts begin to change shape. Distance changes, probability changes, identity changes. Even the meaning of individuality starts to look different. And somewhere within that transformation lies a mystery that has fascinated philosophers for centuries. If another version of you were to exist, perfectly identical in every measurable way, would that person actually be you? Or would they merely be someone who believes they are? At first, the distinction seems obvious, but the longer we examine it, the stranger it becomes. Because the question is no longer about the size of the universe. It is about the nature of consciousness itself. Imagine that somewhere beyond every galaxy you will ever see, beyond every star that will ever appear in a telescope, there exists a person who is completely identical to you. Not almost identical, not 99% identical, perfectly identical. If someone could somehow place the two of you side by side, no measurement would reveal a difference. Every memory would match. Every opinion would match. Every childhood experience would match. Every fear, every ambition, every secret thought. Even the feeling of sitting here right now and wondering about this question would be shared by both of you. At first, this seems like a fascinating cosmological possibility. But very quickly, the discussion begins moving away from astronomy and towards something much stranger. The question is no longer where this other person exists. The question becomes what they actually are. Most people immediately say the answer is obvious. They are not you. They are simply another person. Case closed. Yet the more carefully we examine the situation, the less obvious it becomes. To understand why, imagine a machine capable of creating a perfect copy of your body. Every atom, every cell, every neural connection, every memory stored inside your brain. You step inside. The machine activates. Moments later, an exact duplicate stands beside you. The copy remembers your childhood. The copy remembers your family. The copy remembers learning to ride a bicycle. The copy remembers every conversation you have ever had. The copy remembers entering the machine. In fact, from the copy's perspective, they are you. Their memories tell them they have always been you. Their experiences tell them they have always been you. Their entire subjective reality insists they are the original person. Yet both of you cannot be the original, at least not according to our ordinary understanding of identity. One body entered the machine, two bodies emerged. Somewhere along the way, our intuition begins to struggle. Because what exactly separates the two? Most answers seem unsatisfying. Perhaps location separates them. One stands on the left, one stands on the right. But location feels like a surprisingly weak foundation for identity. If you walk across a room, you remain the same person. Moving through space does not change who you are. Perhaps continuity separates them. One body possesses an uninterrupted physical history. The other was created moments ago. This answer seems stronger. Yet even continuity contains mysteries. After all, the atoms inside your body are constantly changing. Many of the atoms that formed your body years ago are no longer present. The physical material has been replaced countless times throughout your life. Yet despite this constant exchange, you still experience yourself as the same person. Your identity appears to survive ongoing physical change. The situation becomes even stranger when we consider sleep. Every night, consciousness fades. Hours pass. Then awareness returns. Most people do not experience this interruption as death. They experience it as rest. The continuity of memory creates the feeling that the same self has persisted through the night. But what exactly is this self? Where does it reside? Physics can describe the particles in your brain, Neuroscience can describe patterns of activity, yet neither field has fully explained why those processes produce subjective experience. Why does matter become aware? Why does a collection of particles generate an inner world? Why does consciousness exist at all? These questions remain among the deepest mysteries in science, and they become especially difficult when discussing identical copies. Suppose the duplicate version of you laughs. Suppose they cry. Suppose they experience joy. Suppose they feel pain. Would those experiences be real? Almost certainly. Nothing about their consciousness would appear less authentic than yours. From the inside, they would feel completely genuine. This realization creates a remarkable possibility. Perhaps identity is not as fundamental as we assume. Perhaps what we call the self is less like a permanent object and more like an ongoing process, a pattern, a continuously evolving arrangement. Consider a whirlpool forming in a river. The whirlpool appears stable, recognizable, persistent. You can point to it, you can name it, you can watch it for minutes or even hours. Yet the water itself is constantly changing. New molecules flow in, old molecules flow out. The pattern remains while the ingredients change. Some philosophers have suggested that consciousness may resemble something like this. Not a thing, not an object, a process, a dynamic pattern sustained through time. If that is true, then perhaps the most important aspect of you is not the atoms themselves. It is the arrangement, the information, the structure, the ongoing organization that produces awareness. This idea leads to a profound question. If another version of that pattern exists somewhere else in reality, what exactly distinguishes the two? The answer may simply be that they become different the moment their experiences diverge. Imagine the duplicate version of you looking through a different window, seeing a different cloud, hearing a different sound. Immediately, new memories begin forming. The two lives separate. The identical starting point begins evolving into two unique histories, like two roads branching from the same location. The longer they exist, the more different they become. Eventually, they might develop different personalities, different beliefs, different dreams, different fears. Yet both would trace their origins back to the exact same configuration, the exact same starting self. In this way, identity begins looking less like a fixed destination and more like a journey, a continuous story written moment by moment through experience. Perhaps this is why the possibility of another you feels so unsettling, not because it threatens individuality, but because it forces us to examine what individuality actually means. Most of us spend our lives assuming the answer is obvious. Then cosmology introduces scales so vast that old assumptions begin to wobble. Suddenly the self becomes less solid, less permanent, more mysterious. And hidden beneath all of these questions lies an even deeper puzzle. If countless versions of you could potentially exist across a vast universe, each following slightly different paths, then somewhere among those possibilities are lives that unfold very differently from your own. Lives shaped by choices that were almost made. Lives shaped by moments that nearly happened. Lives separated from yours by the smallest imaginable differences. And once we begin exploring those possibilities, the universe becomes stranger still. Think back to a decision that changed your life. Not necessarily a dramatic decision, not a moment that felt historic, just a choice. Perhaps you decided to attend a particular school. Perhaps you accepted a job. Perhaps you sent a message. Perhaps you chose not to send one. At the time, the decision may have felt ordinary. One path was selected. The others disappeared. Life continued. But looking back now, you can often see how much depended on that single moment. A different choice might have introduced different people into your life, different opportunities, different challenges, different memories, a different version of your future. Most of us occasionally wonder about these alternative paths. What if I had moved somewhere else? What if I had said yes? What if I had said no? What if I had met someone slightly earlier? What if I had missed that opportunity entirely? These thoughts are usually treated as imagination, interesting mental exercises, nothing more. Yet when we begin considering an unimaginably vast universe, those possibilities start feeling different, not because every possibility must be real, but because reality may be large enough to contain countless variations of events that closely resemble our own. The universe does not need to produce infinite versions of you for this idea to become fascinating. Even a small number of variations would be enough. Imagine two identical lives beginning from the same starting point, the same childhood, the same family, the same personality, the same memories. For years, they remain completely indistinguishable. Then one small event changes. Perhaps one person misses a train. Perhaps one person meets a stranger. Perhaps one person notices an opportunity. The difference seems insignificant. Yet over time, the consequences begin accumulating. Days become months. Months become years. The gap slowly widens. One conversation leads to another. One decision creates new possibilities. Entire futures emerge from tiny divergences. This phenomenon appears throughout nature. Weather systems provide a famous example. A small disturbance can eventually influence an entire storm. Tiny differences grow larger with time. What begins as a subtle variation can ultimately produce dramatically different outcomes. Human lives often behave similarly. The future is not usually shaped by a single grand event. It is shaped by countless smaller events interacting over long periods. Looking back, life often resembles a network of branching paths. At every moment, possibilities emerge. Some become reality. Others fade away. Yet the distinction between them can be surprisingly fragile. A few seconds, a few words, a few meters. Sometimes that is all it takes. This realization creates an unusual perspective on identity. When you think about yourself, you probably imagine a single continuous person moving through time. One history, one life, one story. But in many ways, your current self represents only one outcome among countless potential outcomes. The person you are today was not guaranteed. The details of your personality were not inevitable. Your memories were not predetermined. They emerged from a particular sequence of experiences. Change the sequence and the resulting person may change as well. Not instantly, not completely, but gradually, like a river changing course over time. This idea can feel unsettling at first. We like believing there is a fixed core hidden somewhere inside us, a permanent self that remains unchanged regardless of circumstance. Yet, experience suggests otherwise. People evolve, beliefs evolve, dreams evolve, priorities evolve. The person you were 10 years ago may feel familiar, yet also strangely distant. Certain aspects remain recognizable. Others have transformed completely. In some sense, you have already become multiple versions of yourself throughout a single lifetime. The child you once were, the teenager you once were, the person you are today, each connected, each different, each shaped by experiences that could easily have unfolded another way. Now imagine extending this process across an unimaginably large cosmos. Perhaps somewhere exists a version of you who made a different choice years ago, a version whose life slowly drifted away from yours. Not dramatically at first, only slightly. But over decades, the difference became profound. They developed different interests, different relationships, different fears, different hopes. Eventually, they became someone you might barely recognize. Yet both lives emerged from nearly identical beginnings. This possibility reveals something fascinating about human identity. The self is not merely something we possess. It is something we continuously create. Every experience leaves a mark. Every decision influences the next. Every memory contributes to the ongoing construction of who we become. Identity is less like a statue carved from stone and more like a story that is constantly being written, a story that never completely stops changing. Perhaps this is why alternative versions of ourselves feel so compelling. Deep down, we recognize that life contains many unrealized possibilities. We sense the presence of roads not taken. We wonder about futures that never arrived. Not because we regret every choice, but because we understand how easily events could have unfolded differently. The universe seems filled with contingency, filled with moments balanced delicately between multiple outcomes. A chance encounter, a delayed flight, a random conversation, a decision made in a single second. Entire lifetimes can emerge from such moments. And the more closely we examine this reality, the more mysterious consciousness becomes. Because while countless alternative possibilities may exist in theory, only one of them becomes your direct experience. Only one path becomes the life you actually remember. Only one version of events becomes the story you call your own. Why this path? Why this perspective? Why this particular stream of awareness rather than any other? The question sounds simple, yet hidden within it lies one of the deepest mysteries in existence. Because even if the universe contains countless versions of reality, each unfolding in different ways, there remains a profound fact that cannot be ignored. You experience only one, and understanding why may require us to examine consciousness itself far more closely than we ever have before. Of all the mysteries we have encountered so far, perhaps none is stranger than this one. Why are you experiencing reality from this particular point of view? At first, the question sounds almost meaningless. The answer seems obvious. You are you. Who else would you be? Yet the more carefully we examine consciousness, the more difficult that answer becomes. Imagine for a moment that another version of you truly exists somewhere in the cosmos. Not merely similar, not approximately the same, perfectly identical. They possess the same memories, the same personality, the same dreams, the same fears, the same sense of self. If someone asked that person who they are, they would give exactly the same answer you would. They would remember the same childhood. They would recognize the same family members. They would believe they had lived the same life. From the inside, their experience would feel completely authentic. And yet, you are not experiencing their thoughts. You are experiencing yours. Somehow, among all possible conscious experiences, this one became yours. Why? Physics offers remarkably little guidance here. The laws of nature describe how particles behave. They describe how stars form. They describe how galaxies evolve. They describe how energy moves through space and time. But nowhere within those equations do we find an explanation for why awareness attaches itself to a particular perspective. This is one of the reasons consciousness remains such a profound mystery. Science has become extraordinarily successful at describing what the universe does. Yet explaining why experience exists at all remains a challenge. Consider your own awareness. Right now, there is an inner world present behind these words. Thoughts arise, images appear, memories surface, emotions shift. There is a feeling of being someone, a feeling of existing, a feeling so familiar that it often goes unnoticed. Yet, if we pause long enough to examine it, the existence of subjective experience becomes astonishing. Why should matter feel like anything from the inside? A rock contains particles. A cloud contains particles. A star contains particles. Your brain also contains particles. Yet somehow the brain produces awareness. Somehow the universe gives rise to an observer capable of contemplating the universe itself. This may be the strangest fact in all of reality. For centuries, philosophers have wrestled with what is sometimes called the hard problem of consciousness. Not how the brain processes information, not how memories form, not how decisions occur. Those questions, difficult as they are, seem approachable through science. The deeper mystery is why any of it feels like something, why there is an experience at all, why there is a first-person perspective, why there is a you. Imagine constructing a perfect robot. Every behavior is identical to a human being. Every response is indistinguishable. Every action appears conscious. The robot laughs. The robot cries. The robot discusses philosophy. The robot insists it is self-aware. Would it actually be conscious, or merely behaving as though it were? No experiment currently exists that can answer this question with certainty. And if we cannot easily determine consciousness in others, understanding it in ourselves becomes even more difficult. We often assume awareness is a simple thing because we experience it continuously. Yet awareness may be the most mysterious phenomenon we know. Now return to the possibility of another you. Suppose that identical person truly exists. Suppose they are just as conscious as you are, just as aware, just as alive. Their experience is no less real than yours. Their thoughts are no less meaningful. Their emotions are no less genuine. From the perspective of the universe, both streams of consciousness exist. Yet, from your perspective, only one does. This creates an extraordinary puzzle. The universe may contain countless conscious observers, each experiencing their own version of reality, each believing themselves to be the center of their own story, each possessing a private world that no one else can directly access. Your consciousness feels uniquely important because it is the one you inhabit. But every conscious being feels exactly the same way. Every observer stands at the center of their own subjective universe. Every observer experiences existence from a singular perspective. This realization can be strangely humbling. The feeling that your perspective is special does not necessarily mean it is cosmically unique. It may simply be a consequence of being conscious at all. Every awareness experiences itself from the inside. Every awareness feels central. Every awareness feels immediate. Perhaps this is not evidence of uniqueness. Perhaps it is simply the nature of consciousness. Yet the mystery remains. Why this perspective? Why this life? Why this stream of experience? The question becomes even stranger when we remember that none of us chose to exist. You did not select your birthplace. You did not select your parents. You did not choose the century in which you would live. You did not choose your earliest memories. You simply arrived. One moment there was no experience. Then suddenly there was. A conscious observer emerged within the universe. A perspective opened. A life began unfolding. Some philosophers have argued that this is the deepest mystery of all. Not why the universe exists, not why matter exists, but why there is something it is like to be you. The more we examine this question, the more extraordinary ordinary life begins to appear. Every person walking down a street carries an entire hidden universe within their mind. Every stranger possesses memories, dreams, fears, hopes, and experiences that are inaccessible to everyone else. Billions of centers of awareness moving through the same reality. Billions of private worlds existing side by side. And perhaps somewhere beyond every visible horizon, there are even more, perhaps countless more, observers looking at their own skies, asking their own questions, experiencing their own moments of wonder, each convinced they occupy a unique place in existence, each wondering what consciousness truly is, each trying to understand why they find themselves here at all. The universe often appears vast because of its galaxies and stars, but consciousness introduces another kind of vastness entirely, an inner vastness, a landscape of subjective experience that remains largely unexplained. And the deeper we travel into that mystery, the more difficult it becomes to separate cosmology from philosophy, because sooner or later, every question about the universe seems to circle back toward the same puzzle, not merely what reality is, but who or what is experiencing it. Every night, millions of lights turn off across the world. People close their eyes. Conversations end. Cities grow quieter. And yet something remarkable remains hidden behind this ordinary scene. Inside countless homes, billions of conscious experiences continue to exist. Each person carries an inner world, a private reality, a stream of thoughts and memories that nobody else can directly enter. You can speak to another person. You can listen to their story. You can spend decades getting to know them. Yet you can never truly step inside their mind. You can never experience their consciousness from the inside. No matter how close two people become, a boundary remains. Invisible, permanent. Every conscious observer exists behind a kind of veil. This fact is so familiar that we rarely stop to appreciate how strange it really is. Think about the people you pass today. The stranger walking down the street, the cashier at a store, the person driving in the lane beside you. Each one possesses an entire universe of experience. They remember childhood moments. They carry private fears. They imagine futures. They relive old memories. They experience joy, sadness, hope, anxiety, curiosity, and wonder. Entire worlds exist behind their eyes. Yet from your perspective, all of that remains hidden. You see only the surface. The realization can be overwhelming, not because it is frightening, but because it reveals how much consciousness surrounds us every day. Humanity often focuses on the vastness of outer space. We think about galaxies, nebulae, black holes, cosmic distances. Yet there is another form of vastness that receives far less attention: the vastness of minds. Billions of conscious experiences unfolding simultaneously. Billions of subjective realities existing side by side, each one unique, each one inaccessible, each one just as real as your own. This mystery becomes even deeper when we consider how little separates us physically. Every human brain is built from the same fundamental ingredients, the same particles, the same atoms, the same physical laws. The neurons inside your brain are not fundamentally different from the neurons inside someone else's. Nature uses remarkably similar materials again and again. Yet from these similar ingredients emerge completely different perspectives, different personalities, different memories, different identities. Somehow matter organizes itself into countless unique experiences, and no one fully understands how. Neuroscience has revealed extraordinary details about the brain. Scientists can observe patterns of activity. They can identify regions associated with memory, language, emotion, and perception. They can watch neurons communicate through vast networks of electrical and chemical signals. Yet even with all this knowledge, the central mystery remains. Why should any of it feel like something? Why should electrical activity become experience? Why should information processing become awareness? No equation has yet provided a complete answer. The existence of consciousness remains one of reality's deepest puzzles. Imagine explaining color to someone who has never seen. Imagine describing music to someone who has never heard sound. Certain experiences seem impossible to fully communicate. They must be lived. Consciousness itself may be similar. We can describe its effects. We can study its mechanisms. But the experience itself remains deeply personal, deeply private. This privacy creates a fascinating consequence. Every conscious observer experiences reality from a unique center. You cannot directly experience another person's perspective. They cannot directly experience yours. The universe contains countless islands of awareness, connected through language and behavior, yet ultimately separated by subjective experience. Perhaps this is why loneliness exists. Perhaps it is why empathy feels so meaningful. Human beings spend much of their lives attempting to bridge the distance between minds. We tell stories, we create art, we write music, we have conversations, we share memories, all in an effort to communicate something that can never be transferred completely: the contents of consciousness itself. And yet, despite this limitation, remarkable connections emerge. People understand one another. They form friendships. They fall in love. They build families and civilizations. Entire cultures arise from minds attempting to communicate across the invisible gaps separating them. The more closely we examine consciousness, the more miraculous this becomes. Not because consciousness is rare, but because consciousness exists at all. The universe could have been different. It could have consisted only of stars, planets, and physical processes unfolding in silence. Instead, somewhere along the way, awareness emerged. Observers appeared. Reality became capable of observing itself. The cosmos produced beings who could ask questions about the cosmos. Few ideas are more astonishing. For billions of years, stars burned without anyone watching. Galaxies collided without anyone noticing. Planets formed and disappeared in complete silence. Then, eventually, consciousness arrived. The universe opened its eyes, perhaps only briefly, perhaps only on a tiny world orbiting an ordinary star. Yet the fact remains. A portion of reality became aware of reality, and that awareness now wonders whether it is alone. This question has accompanied humanity for centuries. Are we the only conscious beings, the only observers, the only minds capable of reflection? So far, we do not know. The night sky remains silent. No confirmed signal has arrived. No undeniable evidence has emerged. Yet the scale of the cosmos makes the possibility difficult to ignore. There are hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy alone, hundreds of billions of galaxies beyond it. Planets appear to be common. The ingredients for life appear throughout the universe. If consciousness emerged here, perhaps it has emerged elsewhere as well, perhaps countless times. If so, then somewhere beyond the darkness, other minds may be looking up at their own skies, wondering about existence, wondering about consciousness, wondering whether anyone else is asking the same questions. The possibility carries a strange comfort, because it suggests that curiosity itself may not belong exclusively to humanity. The desire to understand reality may be a natural consequence of awareness, a pattern that emerges whenever the universe becomes conscious enough to examine itself. And if that is true, then consciousness may be far more widespread than we imagine, not merely on Earth, not merely in our galaxy, but scattered across a cosmos so vast that even our largest maps reveal only a tiny fraction of what exists. Yet this possibility leads naturally toward another question. If conscious observers can emerge elsewhere, and if reality is vast enough to contain unimaginable numbers of worlds, then how unusual is life itself? How rare is your existence? And is consciousness truly an extraordinary exception within the universe? Or is it something that inevitably appears whenever the conditions are right? On a clear night, the stars can feel endless. Even from Earth, far away from the darkest regions of the planet, thousands of points of light become visible overhead. For most of human history, those stars appeared mysterious. Ancient civilizations built stories around them. Navigators used them to cross oceans. Poets used them as symbols of eternity. Yet only recently have we begun to understand what they truly are. Each star is a distant sun. Many possess planets. Many have existed for billions of years, and many were already ancient before Earth even formed. The scale is difficult to absorb. If every grain of sand on a beach represented a star, the Milky Way would still contain more. And our galaxy is only one among hundreds of billions. When people first encounter numbers like these, a natural reaction follows. Life must be everywhere. How could it not be? The universe seems too large for Earth to be special, too large for humanity to be unique, too large for consciousness to have emerged only once. And perhaps that intuition is correct. Yet surprisingly, science still does not know. The truth is that we currently possess only a single confirmed example of life, Earth. That is all. Every plant, every animal, every fungus, every microbe, every human being, everything alive that we have ever studied belongs to one enormous family tree stretching back through billions of years. Despite decades of searching, we have not yet found undeniable evidence of life elsewhere. This creates a fascinating tension. On one hand, the universe appears overwhelmingly large. On the other hand, our data remains incredibly limited. Imagine scooping a cup of water from the ocean and finding one fish. Would you conclude the ocean contains only one fish? Of course not. You would recognize that your sample is too small. The absence of evidence would reveal very little. In many ways, humanity faces a similar situation. Our observations cover only a tiny fraction of reality, a tiny fraction of one galaxy, a tiny fraction of one universe, a tiny fraction of cosmic history. The fact that we have not yet encountered other conscious beings may simply reflect how little we have explored. After all, space is unimaginably vast. Signals travel at the speed of light, yet even light requires years to cross the distances between nearby stars. The nearest star beyond our sun is over 4 light years away. The center of our galaxy lies roughly 26,000 light years away. Other galaxies sit millions of light years beyond that. The cosmos is not merely large. It is separated by enormous stretches of emptiness. This creates a peculiar possibility. Life could be common while contact remains rare. Civilizations could emerge throughout the universe and still remain isolated from one another. Entire histories could unfold on distant worlds without either side ever knowing the other exists. The night sky might appear silent not because consciousness is rare, but because the universe is vast. Yet, there is another possibility. Perhaps consciousness really is rare. Perhaps the journey from chemistry to biology is extraordinarily difficult. Perhaps the emergence of intelligence requires an unlikely sequence of events. Perhaps awareness itself represents one of the most improbable phenomena in existence. Scientists continue debating these questions. No consensus exists. The universe has not yet revealed the answer. And maybe that uncertainty is part of what makes consciousness so extraordinary. Whether life is common or rare, your existence remains astonishing. Think about the chain of events required for you to be here. Not humanity in general, not life on Earth, you specifically. Every generation of your ancestors survived long enough to have children. Everyone. Across thousands of years, across wars, diseases, accidents, disasters, migrations, and countless moments of chance. If a single event had unfolded differently centuries ago, an entirely different person might exist today, or perhaps no one at all. The deeper we look, the more existence begins to resemble an intricate web of unlikely events. A particular planet formed around a particular star. A particular world remained stable long enough for life to emerge. Life survived extinctions. Species evolved. Civilizations appeared. Knowledge accumulated. And eventually, after billions of years of cosmic history, a conscious observer arrived capable of asking how any of it happened. The chain is so long that it almost feels impossible. Yet here you are, not imagining existence, experiencing it. This realization often produces a strange emotional response, not pride, not superiority, something closer to wonder, because regardless of how common consciousness may be throughout the cosmos, your awareness represents something remarkable. For billions of years, Earth existed without you. Then suddenly, for a brief period, a new perspective appeared, a new window through which the universe could observe itself. One day that perspective will disappear again. The atoms will remain. The planet will remain. The stars will remain. But the particular experience that is your life will end. Against cosmic timescales, every conscious life is brief, extraordinarily brief. Human history itself occupies only a tiny fraction of Earth's existence. Earth occupies only a tiny fraction of cosmic history, and your individual lifetime occupies only a tiny fraction of that. Yet somehow, within this fleeting interval, consciousness emerges. Questions emerge. Meaning emerges. The universe becomes personal. This may be one of the most beautiful aspects of awareness. It transforms a vast physical cosmos into something experienced. Without observers, there are stars. With observers, there is wonder. Without observers, there is light. With observers, there is beauty. Without observers, there is motion. With observers, there is understanding. Consciousness does not merely exist within the universe. It changes what the universe means, at least from the inside. And if awareness can emerge here, perhaps it can emerge elsewhere. Perhaps countless times. Perhaps on worlds orbiting stars we will never see. Perhaps in civilizations separated from us by millions of years. Perhaps in forms entirely unlike anything we can imagine. The universe may contain far more minds than we realize, or it may contain very few. For now, we simply do not know. But either possibility leads toward the same profound conclusion. Consciousness is not something to take for granted. Whether rare or common, it represents one of reality's greatest mysteries. Because before we can understand how many conscious observers exist, we must first answer a more difficult question. What exactly is consciousness in the first place? And why does the universe produce it at all? When people think about the great mysteries of science, their minds often turn toward distant galaxies, black holes, dark matter, the beginning of the universe, the fate of cosmic expansion. These are undeniably profound questions. Yet, there is an argument to be made that the greatest mystery is much closer than any galaxy, closer than any star, closer than your own heartbeat. It is the simple fact that you are aware. Not that you are alive, not that your brain functions, not that you can think, but that experience exists at all. Right now, there is something it feels like to be you. There is a sensation of existence, a perspective, an inner world. And despite centuries of investigation, nobody fully understands why. Imagine describing reality from the outside. You could describe particles moving through space. You could describe atoms forming molecules. You could describe chemistry giving rise to biology. You could describe neurons exchanging electrical signals. In principle, every physical process inside the brain could be mapped with extraordinary precision. Every signal, every connection, every interaction. Yet even if such a description were complete, something seems to remain missing. The description explains what the brain does, but does it explain why experience exists? Does it explain why the color blue feels like something? Why music creates emotion? Why memories possess a particular texture? Why awareness accompanies physical processes at all? This gap between physical description and subjective experience has puzzled philosophers and scientists for generations. Because consciousness appears fundamentally different from everything else we observe. A star does not tell us what it feels like to be a star. A planet does not describe its existence. A mountain does not wonder why it exists. But somehow the universe produced beings capable of asking these questions. Beings capable of reflecting upon reality. Beings capable of becoming aware of their own awareness. And that fact remains astonishing, no matter how familiar it becomes. Consider how strange it truly is. The atoms inside your body are not alive. The particles inside those atoms are not conscious. Individual neurons do not appear to possess human awareness. Yet when arranged in a sufficiently complex way, something extraordinary emerges. A conscious observer, a first-person perspective, a self. Some scientists believe consciousness is an emergent property. Just as individual water molecules are not wet, yet large collections of them create wetness. Perhaps individual neurons are not conscious, yet large networks generate awareness. This idea is appealing because it fits many patterns found elsewhere in nature. Simple components often create unexpected behaviors when combined. Snowflakes emerge from water molecules. Hurricanes emerge from moving air. Life emerges from chemistry. Perhaps consciousness emerges from information processing. Perhaps awareness is what sufficiently complex systems naturally do. Yet even this explanation leaves unanswered questions. Why should complexity create experience rather than merely behavior? Why should information processing feel like anything from the inside? The mystery remains. Other theories attempt to answer this question in different ways. Some suggest consciousness may be more fundamental than we realize. Not something created by matter, but something woven into reality itself. Others propose that awareness emerges whenever information reaches certain levels of integration. Still others argue that we may be missing an entirely new framework for understanding the relationship between mind and matter. The truth is that no consensus exists. Consciousness remains one of the few subjects where modern science still confronts enormous uncertainty. And perhaps that uncertainty reveals something important. Perhaps consciousness is not simply another phenomenon waiting to be explained. Perhaps it represents a deeper layer of reality than we currently understand. After all, every scientific observation ultimately depends upon conscious observers. Every experiment, every measurement, every discovery. Science studies reality through experience. Without awareness, there would be no observations to interpret, no questions to ask, no theories to construct. In a strange way, consciousness stands both inside and outside the scientific process. It is the subject being studied and the means by which study occurs. This dual role makes it uniquely difficult to investigate. The challenge becomes even more intriguing when we return to the possibility of other minds. Throughout the cosmos, there may be countless conscious observers, perhaps billions, perhaps trillions, perhaps far more, each experiencing reality from a private perspective, each asking questions about existence, each wondering what consciousness truly is. If this is true, then the universe may contain vast oceans of awareness scattered across unimaginable distances, not connected, not communicating, simply existing. countless centers of experience shining quietly within the darkness. The image is both beautiful and humbling because it reminds us that consciousness may not belong to humanity. It may belong to the universe itself. Not in the sense that the universe is literally conscious, but in the sense that consciousness appears to be one of the things the universe is capable of producing. Stars are one expression of physical law. Galaxies are another. Life is another. Awareness may be another. A way in which reality becomes capable of examining itself. This perspective changes how we think about existence. The cosmos is no longer merely a collection of objects moving through space. It becomes a process capable of generating observers, capable of generating meaning, capable of generating questions. And among all those questions, one remains particularly fascinating. If consciousness is not unique to Earth, then what happens when awareness becomes widespread across a vast universe? What does reality look like when countless observers emerge throughout cosmic history? Because once we begin thinking about consciousness on cosmic scales, another possibility starts to appear. Perhaps the universe is not only larger than we imagine. Perhaps it is far more populated with observers than we have ever dared to believe. For most of human history, people believed the universe revolved around them. The Earth appeared central. The stars appeared to circle overhead. Everything seemed arranged around the human experience. Science gradually dismantled that picture. The Earth was not the center. The sun was not the center. Our galaxy was not the center. Again and again, humanity discovered that reality was larger and less human-focused than it first appeared. Yet there is one possibility we have not fully confronted. What if consciousness itself is not rare? What if awareness is not an extraordinary exception within the universe? What if observers emerge wherever conditions allow them to emerge? At first glance, this idea feels almost optimistic, perhaps too optimistic. After all, we still have no confirmed evidence of intelligent life beyond Earth. No verified messages, no visitors, no undeniable signs. The universe appears silent. But silence can be misleading. Imagine standing alone on a beach at night. You look out across the ocean. The darkness stretches endlessly toward the horizon. No lights are visible. No sounds reach you. From your perspective, the ocean appears empty. Yet beneath the surface, countless forms of life may be moving through the water. Entire ecosystems may exist beyond your awareness. The absence of evidence does not necessarily imply the absence of existence. The universe may operate similarly. Our observations are limited. Our instruments are limited. Our lifespan is limited. We occupy a tiny region of one galaxy during a tiny moment of cosmic history. Against such scales, certainty becomes difficult. Consider the age of the universe, roughly 13.8 billion years. Human civilization has existed for only a tiny fraction of that time. Modern technology for an even smaller fraction. Radio communication for little more than a century. In cosmic terms, humanity has barely begun speaking. And already, we wonder why nobody has answered. Imagine two civilizations separated by a million years. One may rise and disappear long before the other develops technology. Their histories never overlap. Their existence never intersects. The universe may be filled with stories that never meet, worlds that never learn about one another, observers who spend entire lifetimes wondering whether they are alone. This possibility introduces a profound shift in perspective. We often imagine the universe as a collection of physical objects, stars, planets, nebulae, galaxies. But perhaps reality is also a collection of viewpoints, a collection of experiences, a collection of observers scattered throughout space and time. Every conscious being becomes a unique window through which the universe is perceived. No two perspectives are exactly alike. No two histories unfold in precisely the same way. Each observer encounters a different version of reality, a different sequence of moments, a different story. From this perspective, consciousness becomes one of the universe's most remarkable creations, not because it is necessarily rare, but because it transforms existence into experience. A galaxy can exist for billions of years, yet without observers, nobody witnesses its beauty. A star can shine across cosmic distances, yet without awareness, there is nobody to wonder about its light. Consciousness gives meaning to observation. It turns physical events into experiences, and if observers are widespread throughout the cosmos, then reality may be far richer than it appears from Earth. Somewhere, perhaps, another civilization watches a different sky. Their constellations are unfamiliar. Their history is unfamiliar. Their biology may be unfamiliar. Yet their questions could be surprisingly similar. What is consciousness? How large is reality? Why does the universe exist? Are we alone? The questions themselves may be universal, not because civilizations communicate them to one another, but because awareness naturally produces curiosity. An observer eventually begins asking about the environment in which it exists. It begins searching for patterns, searching for explanations, searching for meaning. The universe may therefore contain countless centers of wonder, countless minds attempting to understand the same reality from different locations. The image is strangely beautiful, not a lonely cosmos filled only with empty space, but a vast landscape of experiences unfolding simultaneously, most never meeting, most never communicating, yet all participating in the same cosmic story. And perhaps this brings us back to the question that started our journey, the possibility of another you. At first, the idea seemed to concern duplication, copies, identity, infinite space. But beneath all of those concepts lies something deeper. The possibility of another you matters because it forces us to confront the nature of consciousness itself. What does it mean to be an observer? What does it mean to have a perspective? What makes one stream of awareness distinct from another? These questions become increasingly difficult as the scale of reality expands, because eventually we reach a point where the universe becomes so large that familiar assumptions begin to dissolve. The boundaries between uniqueness and repetition become less clear. The boundaries between possibility and inevitability become less clear. Even the meaning of individuality starts to shift. And when that happens, we find ourselves facing one final question, a question that is not really about cosmology, not really about infinity, not really about distant galaxies. It is a question about meaning. If reality is vast enough to contain countless observers, countless possibilities, and perhaps even countless versions of ourselves, then what exactly makes this life matter? Why should this experience be important? Why should this moment matter at all? The answer may be simpler than we expect, but reaching it requires looking at existence from a very different perspective. Throughout this journey, we have imagined a universe so vast that the mind struggles to contain it, a universe stretching far beyond every visible horizon, a universe potentially filled with countless worlds, countless observers, perhaps even countless versions of ourselves. At first, these ideas can feel unsettling. If reality is truly that large, what happens to uniqueness? What happens to individuality? What happens to meaning? The questions seem natural. After all, many people assume that something is valuable because it exists only once. A rare object appears precious. A unique event appears significant. An unrepeatable experience appears meaningful. Yet perhaps this assumption deserves closer examination. Consider a sunrise. No sunrise is truly unique. They have occurred for billions of years. They will continue occurring long after any individual observer is gone. Yet repetition does not make them meaningless. Their beauty remains. Their significance remains. Now consider music. A song can be played thousands of times. Millions of people can hear it, yet the experience still matters. The existence of other listeners does not diminish the reality of your own experience. Meaning does not seem to depend upon exclusivity. It depends upon experience. This realization becomes increasingly important as we contemplate the possibility of other observers. Perhaps somewhere beyond our observable universe, there is another version of you. Perhaps there are many. Perhaps there are none. At present, we simply do not know. But notice something remarkable. The answer changes almost nothing about the reality of your life. Your memories remain real. Your relationships remain real. Your joys remain real. your struggles remain real. The existence of another observer cannot experience your life for you. They cannot feel your emotions. They cannot live your moments. They cannot occupy your perspective. No matter how vast reality becomes, the experience occurring within your awareness remains uniquely yours. Not unique because it happens only once in existence. Unique because it is this experience, this perspective, this moment. There is something strangely comforting about that idea. We spend much of our lives searching for cosmic importance. We want reassurance that we occupy a special place within reality. We want confirmation that our existence matters. Yet perhaps meaning was never something granted by the universe. Perhaps meaning emerges naturally from conscious experience itself. A conversation matters because it is experienced. A friendship matters because it is experienced. Love matters because it is experienced. Wonder matters because it is experienced. The significance does not arrive from some external authority. It arises from awareness, from participation, from being present within existence at all. And when viewed this way, consciousness begins to appear even more extraordinary than before. For billions of years, the universe expanded without you. Stars formed and died. Galaxies collided. Black holes consumed matter. Entire chapters of cosmic history unfolded in complete silence. Then, for a brief moment, awareness appeared. Your awareness. A perspective through which the universe could be observed. A mind capable of curiosity. A mind capable of reflection. A mind capable of asking questions about reality itself. The fact that this experience is temporary does not diminish its value. If anything, it may enhance it. We often imagine permanence as the source of meaning. Yet many of life's most meaningful experiences are meaningful precisely because they do not last forever. A sunset, a season, a conversation, a childhood, a lifetime. Their beauty is intertwined with their impermanence. The universe appears to operate according to a similar principle. Everything changes. Everything evolves. Everything flows through time. Stars are born. Stars die. Galaxies transform. Life emerges. Life disappears. Against this backdrop of constant change, consciousness becomes something precious. Not because it lasts forever, because it doesn't. The cosmos may be unimaginably large. It may contain more worlds than we can count, more observers than we can imagine, more possibilities than we will ever know. Yet, for each observer, there exists only one present moment, one immediate experience, one unfolding story. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps meaning does not require cosmic uniqueness. Perhaps it requires only awareness, the ability to witness existence, the ability to experience reality from the inside, the ability to stand beneath a night sky and wonder about it. In the end, the possibility of another you may remain forever unresolved. Maybe the universe repeats itself. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe somewhere beyond every visible horizon, another observer is asking the same questions. Or maybe this perspective is singular in ways we do not yet understand. The truth remains hidden beyond the limits of our knowledge. But perhaps that uncertainty is not a problem. Perhaps it is part of the beauty. The universe has always been larger than our assumptions, stranger than our intuitions, more mysterious than our expectations. Every generation discovers that reality extends beyond another horizon, beyond another boundary, beyond another certainty. And there is every reason to believe that journey will continue. For now, we find ourselves in a remarkable position. Tiny creatures on a small planet orbiting an ordinary star, yet capable of contemplating infinity, capable of imagining distant worlds, capable of wondering whether another version of ourselves might exist somewhere beyond the darkness. Few things illustrate the power of consciousness more clearly than that. The universe produced stars. The universe produced galaxies. The universe produced worlds. And somehow, after billions of years, the universe produced a mind capable of asking what it all means. Perhaps that is the deepest mystery of all. Not whether another you exists, but that there is a you here at all. And as the night sky stretches silently overhead, filled with distances beyond imagination and possibilities. Beyond counting, one simple fact remains. Against all odds, for this brief moment in cosmic history, the universe is awake enough to wonder about itself.